We're here again for another episode of Trash Talk.
I thought you were on strike reading that paper back there. Jeez.
I know, we've been talking about trash for so long that everybody else is saying, you know what, can't handle all this trash these guys have been talking about. We're going on strike for higher wages. So the collectors have gone on strike.
Man, I know. And that was back in the day when they said garbage collectors. Now we're so mean. We're like, oh, look at the trash guy.
Yes. Or aren't they called domestic engineers or something like that? Waste removal engineers. They're not called garbage men anymore.
You don't want to be offensive.
That's right. And it's funny. Just prior to us starting this show, our garbage trucks were going down our alleyway picking up the trash. So
I'm still waiting on mine.
Yeah, that's like music to my ears. I turn off the TV, turn off everything, open the doors and windows, and listen to that. The squealing brakes and the arm coming out to pick up the can and dump it in.
It's funny because we do that here. Luke knows when the garbage truck is coming, and he's like, "Dad, the garbage truck." And we go out on the patio. Sometimes we go out in the street if it's the guy he knows, and we watch him. That's And the one garbage truck guy is awesome. He knows Luke. He talks to him. The other guy, not so much. But anyway.
Well, this is another episode of Trash Talk, and we again are brought to you by the Patriot Sandwich Company in Denton, Texas. Great place, great people. David Jordan and his crew. Awesome food. Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't get any fresher because he's actually there every morning slicing the meats to be used on the sandwiches for that day. So it does not get any fresher. It's no go into the freezer and take out the meat. And everything is done fresh every day. Trust me, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is not a Jared situation here. This is David. I texted David at 5 a.m. before, and just because I had a random thought, and he's got back to me as he's slicing the meat and taste testing. And if you guys haven't been there yet, we have a really cool contest for you, an amazing contest that we're going to talk to you about, where you can actually win a sandwich, not one, but two sandwiches.
There's
two drinks. There's more, courtesy of Trash Talk and Patriot Sandwich Company. Stuart, why don't you fill them in on the details?
What we're going to do is we want you to have a great Valentine's Day. So here's the deal. What you do is put your name and your email address on a piece of paper. We're going to announce it at the end of the show, so you'll have it too. And you're going to put it in an envelope, and you're going to mail it to Trash Talk, P.O. Box 5444, Frisco, Texas, 75035. We want you to enter, and the winner that we pick at Valentine's Day is going to win lunch for two at Patriot Sandwich Company. We're talking sandwiches, drinks, the whole 9 yards. The only thing we're not going to cover is the cost of that Admiral sandwich that they have. That's that 14-pound sandwich or something.
We can't do that. We're on a budget.
Can't do that. We both have families to support, but you're going to get a sandwich of your choice, and we'll throw in the chips and a drink and all for not one but two. Okay, your name, your email address, envelope, P.O. Box 5444, Frisco, Texas 75035. And David and his crew will take good care of you when you walk in and say, "Hey, I'm here with my honey because I just won the meal for two."
We got it's a great deal. We're going to announce that on our. What date are we announcing the winner? I can't remember.
It'll be on the 16th of February.
16th of February. It's an after Valentine's Day special, but it's for Valentine's Day.
Right.
And
we
we're
will
going to announce
it. Pull the winner on Valentine's Day, and you will be announced live on this program on the 16th. And whatever you're doing, you're going to have to stop because you're going to tune in that morning and say, "I won."
It's going to be awesome.
Okay. I guess the disclaimer is that owners and employees of the Patriot Sandwich Company are disqualified.
And I guess we can't win either, which
Yeah,
that's a bummer.
we might enter under assumed names.
Yeah, I've got some aliases.
Yeah, got a few that I've used previously in the fall for elections.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I've worked in the bar industry enough to give people plenty of fake names. So.
That's yes. Let's see. Yes, Jim Beam. Put that in the envelope. Johnny Walker. Oh, okay.
My initials are PBR.
Yes, and J and B. But name and email address. We'll announce it at the end of the show too. So make sure you got a pen and paper handy so you can write it down.
Absolutely.
So that talk, the talk of the sandwiches and everything, they don't serve beer at Patriot Sandwich Company yet.
Yeah, it's the only thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they may end up getting that beer license one day. If you eat enough of their sandwiches and he makes enough money, he'll be able to.
Yeah, maybe at the next location. So you never know.
That's right. That's right. But you know what would go really good with his sandwiches, especially for those that decide they're going to run by and pick it up and take it home, an ice cold beer.
Something to wash it down, especially if it's a spicy sandwich. You could actually find a good IPA or lager if you like to go with that sandwich. And this is a bummer for me. So January is my detox, sober, whatever you want to call it, month. Not because of any weird New Year's resolution. I used to do the Big D climb. I did it for, 8-9 years. So it was a training month for me. And I just cut out all the beer. Well, this year they're doing it virtually. So obviously I'm not going to do that. But I'm keeping with the tradition of cutting out all beer, wine, and whiskey. So as we talk about beer, I'm thinking about all the good ones I want.
Well, you're down to your last week in January too. So, you can see the finish line ahead.
I could see the 6-pack just staring at me, but or my growler or my, and I've got some really good ones because I like to save them. I get together with my friends and we save them. I've got beer that I've been sitting on for a year or two.
Does
that's
beer
been aged
like wine?
Well, it all depends. Yes, there's some beers if they're bottled conditioned or you have them in the proper storage that age. Most of the bourbon beers, anything that's aged in a barrel, will age. Obviously, you're not going to just age a Bud Light, but you shouldn't even drink a Bud Light. But it's 36% water, so why would you drink that? But but yeah, they age. I've got some really good bourbon beers that they don't make anymore. I've got one from Founders. It's called CBS. Okay, it's Canadian Breakfast Stout, and they don't make it
CBS. Not to be
CBS.
confused. Not to be confused with the network.
No. So CBS is Canadian Breakfast Stout. I think it's about 14.5%. It's aged in Canadian whiskey barrels with maple, Canadian maple, obviously. It is delicious. It's a nice stout. It's a thick beer. It's not one that you just pound it. You sip on it, enjoy, and as it warms up, you get all that flavor. I've been sitting on that for almost 2 years now because it's been 2 years since they made it. I just don't want to drink it. It's the last one.
Now, that's not the typical kind of beer that you go into a bar and just say, I'd like to order a CBS, do you?
Well, if they have it, if it's some of the good craft beer bars around town, some of the specialty places, yeah, you're not going to go to Applebee's to get it, then again, why would you go to Applebee's? Anyway, but no, you're not. But some specialty places, around town, some of the growler fill shops may have a keg sitting there. You may find a bottle of it. One of the places like, believe it or not, Market Street is a phenomenal place for beer. They've expanded their selection. The guys there are super knowledgeable and they get a lot of rare stuff. So I like to go there and talk to them. They might have it, but no, you're not just going to find this at, Joe's Beer and Go,
And I know that you are a connoisseur of beer. I'm a kind of sewer. about it, but and are you ready for this? You've spent your life behind bars. Keep your eye on that line, folks.
Yes, please do.
But I mean, you know just about everything there is to know about beer, having been in that industry for so long. I'm the novice. I don't know nothing about it except what I think tastes good. You probably would spit out on the floor. Uh, but number one, what is an IPA?
So IPAs, back in, now without going too into it, back in the day, probably about 9 years ago, maybe 10, I really didn't like IPAs that much. I've had them before back in Michigan. I just never really liked them. They're typically a very more bitter beer, hoppy, that you always hear the hoppy term, which is kind of a lame term because there's hops in every beer. But it's the bitterness. But IPA is an Indian Pale Ale, is what it means.
Indian Pale Ale?
Yeah, Indian Pale Ale. And so what they did was, it was invented years ago by the Brits. They had to take beer to India. So that India could not produce beer because it was too hot. They just couldn't get the beer. But they had to be able to travel over 4, 5, 6 months to get to India overseas. So they needed to make a beer that would last the travel and be able to taste good. Well, inadvertently, they created the IPA by accident. They threw, they made it, they threw in the hops, and it lasted. But by the time it got over there, it was bitter. Well, they loved it in India. They loved it. And it became the India Pale Ale. It was a accident. Now it's probably one of the top selling styles in the country. And there's all kinds of different styles from IPAs. A straight up, what I like to call a straight up IPA, is going to be bitter to somebody that doesn't like bitter beer. It's going to be very bitter. They can run really high in alcohol content, ABV. But there's so many of them now, and now they've done so many variants. The not so IPA, where it still has that IPA taste, but it's maybe 4.5% alcohol. The hazies, the New England IPA and the hazy IPAs are more citrus than bitter now. So those styles have just been dominating the market when it comes to beer these days.
And and what's the difference between an IPA and a craft beer?
Well, craft beer, can be anything. You can have a craft lager, IPA, stout, whatever. Because craft, really, all that means is it's not from the big boys. You're not a Budweiser, Coors, mainstream, garbage beer. You're not those guys.
It doesn't come in a 6-pack.
Yeah, it might. Oh, it might. Yeah. But you're some of the more, locals. You look at Texas. So when I really came to Texas, there was only roughly 6, and I could be wrong, 6 breweries in the DFW area, not in the state of Texas, but in the DFW. Now we're pushing like 72, 82. Some of them have come and gone and been bought, but whatever. Those are going to be your craft brews, your craft beer, your Tups, your Franconias, Texas Ale Projects, Manhattan Project. I could go on. My favorite from South Lyon, Michigan, Witch's Hat Brewing Company. Love you guys. Those are craft because they are independently owned. They're using probably better products, better brewing, better everything, and that's a craft beer. So, but you can get any style. You can get everything from the triple IPA aged in whiskey barrels to just a simple lager.
Is a craft beer a fresher beer? Because when you say it's handcrafted and brewed for almost for immediate consumption.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I guess if you compare it to some of the mainstream beers as far as ingredients go, they're probably better. And I know some of the mainstream guys use the top-notch stuff. I'm not putting them down. It just, they taste different. They're mainstream.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know if it, you could still get some bad beers. I've gone to certain places to buy some beer, and I'll check the label on it. If I look at the beer and I'm like, that beer style came out a long time ago, why is it still here? I'll check the label and see what it says on there, when the date was. Sometimes they re-release it. Sometimes it just gets overlooked, and beers can go bad. Not like we talked about them aging, but an IPA is not meant to age. You're meant to drink that right away. Tupps has a series called DDH. It's double dry hopped. That's what they do. They make a double dry hopped IPA. And that beer on the can it literally says consume now. You don't want to keep that a good more than 3-4 months, because it starts to break down. It'll taste different. The yeast will take over and you'll be drinking this yeast bomb. It's gross.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I've done it. You pour it out. I mean, the IPA looks like orange juice anyway, but then it looks like a gray old orange juice. Oh, it's disgusting. You don't want to, that's how you know the beer is bad.
All right. Another thing I never really knew the difference between lager and stout.
Well, the lager, your lagers, let's see, I'm trying not to go too over the top because I could talk about this for hours.
Hey, you spent a life behind bars.
Yes, I did. A life behind bars. So a Pilsner is a lager, okay, if that makes sense. But not all lagers are Pilsners.
Okay.
You can have your typical lager, which is that golden looking color, but you can also have an amber lager, a dark lager, a black lager. Your Pilsner is going to typically be that amber looking lager, or that amber color. And it's going to be a little bit, and I use this term loosely, a little bit spicier than a lager. Most of the common beers that you see, your Bud Lights, your Miller Lights, they're not lagers, they're Pilsner styles.
Okay.
They're loosely based off, where'd you go? What happened? Bud Light just canceled me. I don't know. But they're loosely based off that. A lager, on the other hand, is going to be around the same ABV, alcohol content, but it's going to be not as spicy. It's going to have almost German lagers almost have like a popcorn taste to them, but it's going to have a little. I want to say a little more malt to it, a little more malt backing than a Pilsner. Now, when you look at a stout, Guinness, we'll go Guinness. Everybody knows Guinness. It's an Irish stout. It's an Irish dry stout. It's not going to be comparable to some of the American stouts. That is a dark beer. It's going to be much more bitter. Guinness isn't bitter, but typically a stout is much more bitter than a lager. The ABV can range anywhere because Guinness has low alcohol. I mean, Guinness is like 5%. It's not a heavy alcohol beer. 5.6, I think.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Yeah, and it's not a heavy beer. Most stouts can be heavy. Guinness is by far not a heavy beer at all. But some stouts can get up there and you got like a 14-15% stout, and it typically are bitter. Stouts are more bitter than porters. Porter's a dark beer, but it's got that creamy richness to it. Stouts are going to have a little bit of a bite. If you look at the IBUs, which is the International Bitter Units, that's how they measure beers.
International Bitter Unit.
You like that? Yeah.
Somebody said, what are we going to call the amount of bitters that's in this beer? Why do we call it an International Bitter Unit?
It's very fancy. So, but to reach a certain level of beer, like to be a double IPA, you've got to be over 8%, or you're not a double IPA. Everybody assumes when they see like double IPA or triple IPAs that they're a bit more bitter, and that's just not true. That's how they measure the alcohol content. So if it's double, it's going to be higher, the alcohol. But if you look at a stout, stouts typically have more IBUs than a lager. Your baseball beers are lagers,
And the beers will change and have different flavors from country to country, don't they?
A lot of them do. When I was in Ireland and I went to Guinness so I could do the tour and get certified on how to pour Guinness properly and all that, it tastes very different over there, and they serve it different over there than we serve it over here. It's very different. I'm not saying it's bad over here, but after having one in Ireland or 17 in Ireland, I almost don't want one over here. Most bars in Ireland, when you go to get a Guinness, they have half pints served already. They're sitting there because they drink them at room temperature. And then they pour the rest of them. Yeah, they pour the rest of them. You get the full flavor that way. in America, we like our beers, super cold, because really, if you get a Bud Light or a basic lager at 29 degrees or 30 degrees cold, you're not tasting how bad the beer is, and you can typically just pound it in the summertime. You don't want to drink a stout that cold at all. You want it to warm up a little to get all the flavor.
Yeah, and most of the time that we drink ice cold beer, it's because it's on a hot day and it kind of helps to cool you down.
Yeah, you're mowing the grass. It's December in Texas and it's 105.
So then in the winter time, you should be drinking your stout beers that are served warm at room temperature.
Plus, they fill you up. I mean, they typically fill you up. And I mean, so Guinness used to have a program back in the day. They don't anymore, an advertising program where they would advertise that Guinness was good for you because of all the pure, rich ingredients, and the grains and stuff in Guinness are good for you. They would advertise that it was so good for you. They had pregnant women doing commercials for Guinness. You go to the Guinness over in Ireland, and they got all the old, posters, and there's a pregnant woman sitting there drinking a Guinness. And I'm like, well, isn't that Irish?
And that's probably how she got pregnant.
That probably is, Yeah, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but so stouts. I'm a big stout guy. I love dark beer, and I can drink it when it is 100 degrees. I prefer not to, but I can. And right now is that time of year. I mean, from the end of September to I don't know when, it's stout season. I mean, you're just drinking those bourbon aged stouts and wine aged stouts, and it's some really good stuff.
Are flavored beers all they're cracked up to be? I know I mentioned to you that I don't know, I guess just because I was from the Midwest or so, but Leinenkugel, I always kind of enjoyed a Leinenkugel, and that may not even be on your spectrum, but they used to make a specific flavor for summer, and in the fall, you would find pumpkin spice. In the fall, you would find citrus flavors. Are those beers all they're cracked up to be?
I think they have a place. I do. So Leinenkugel, I used to drink summer shandy back in the day. Number one, it was cheap. It wasn't Bud Light. And, from Michigan, like you said, Midwest, it's all up there. Leinenkugel's in Texas now. It finally got here about, 5 years ago, something like that, maybe more. There's a place for them. There's some really good ones out there, and there's some really bad ones out there. Leinenkugel does a vanilla porter that's delicious. I think it's called Snowplow, but there's a lot of good ones out there. Yeah. And there's a lot of bad ones too. There's a pickle beer out there right now.
A pickle beer?
Yeah. So I'm probably going to get creamed for saying this. I don't really care, but it's by Martin House Brewery in Fort Worth. Those guys are amazing. They're super creative, amazing guys. They teamed up with Best Made, and they do a Best Made pickle sour. And it's literally like you're drinking pickle juice. And I hate pickles. I hate this beer, but
I like pickles. I might have to try that.
And you can get it. They have it. You can find it at Market Street, or not Walmart, maybe Target, but definitely Market Street. It's Best Made pickle beer by Martin House. And they have a spicy one too, the spicy pickle beer. And everybody tells me that it's exactly, they nailed the flavors of it. So there's a market there. I mean, our palates are different than they were back in the day, from PBR or Coors to Sam Adams was a big thing, Now
if you walk into a bar, you sit down and you want to order a beer, your preference, out of the bottle or out of on tap?
Typically I go draft. I like draft beer. I'm going to tell you, back in the day, it mattered. Nobody would drink cans back in the day. It tasted like aluminum crap. It was like the cheap beer. That's not the case anymore. A lot of breweries are going with cans now. Number one, because they're cheaper than bottles. And two, you don't have that much room of air. So when you're filling the cans of let's say Tupps and McKinney, you're on the can line and you're filling the beer. There's not that much room where air can get in, which can cause that beer to go bad faster. So it's the closest thing from drinking straight from the tap is a canned beer nowadays. So, but when I go to a bar, I always look at the draft list. Even if I'm not drinking beer, I just like to see what they got. And I prefer drafts. Sometimes I'll get a bottle if it's a rare find. And again, sometimes breweries only distribute bottles. They don't put it on draft. So it just depends what it is.
If you like your beer closer to room temperature, then would the draft beers be a little closer to the room temperature than the bottles?
Typically, yeah, because bottles are in one fridge and you set the temperature. Draft systems, if they have a good draft system, you can adjust the pressure from each line. I used to work at a place that had 100 beer taps. I think it was 100. It was 100, yeah.
Wow.
And right before COVID killed it. And we had different regulators on each beer line to regulate not only the pressure coming out, because certain beers got to be at a certain pressure, but temperature for most of it. Obviously, you can't do that without spending major money. So you put your kegs like in the front of the cooler, by the door where it's not as cold, and you try to do that. But the pressure's a big thing too. So
I'm getting thirsty.
I am too. I love beer.
But you still got a couple of days to go before you get to the end of the month. So
I know. And then I get in this weird thing where I've made it this long and I just don't drink for a while. And I get together with my guys, I call them the Knights of the Bar Top. We did a series of beer podcasts on my other podcast, The Life of an Average Show, where we talked about our favorites, breweries. We broke down all beer and we drank the whole time. So that was interesting.
It was a 12-hour show.
Yeah, we get together once a month and we do beer tastings, and we'll just, and when COVID was happening, in the beginning, we just did Zoom call beer tastings, and it was, well, there's some good beer. I got to get you some beer. We got to expand your horizon.
Yeah, I'll have to go someplace where I could sample different beers to see, because, I go back to the days of Hams and Pabst Blue Ribbon and Schlitz and all of those from up in your neck of the woods. So those are the names that I remember. And then when I served overseas, the number one beer in Vietnam, Falstaff.
Falstaff, really?
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it was because it wasn't selling in the U.S. that they shipped it to the troops, because we drank anything over there.
Well, yeah, who cares? And what's funny is, though, overseas, like Japan and China, there's some really cool beers now. It used to just be like Ichiban and some of those other ones that are simple lagers that I like, but they're doing some craft stuff over there. Overseas right now in like Asia, that I was shocked. Europe has always had good beer. Germany, come on. You want a good lager, you want a good, Pilsner and Oktoberfest, you go to Germany. Although there's a phenomenal German brewery right here in Texas called Altstadt, and they're based down in wine country. Well, I can't think. New Braunfels. And they are
German community, yeah.
Yeah, they are 100. It's Texas made, so you get to pay the Texas price, which is cheaper than buying German beer. But it's 100% German beer. They follow the German purity law when they make the beer. Franconia did that too, and McKinney followed the German purity law. And I'm telling you right now, you get a big mug of that Allstat, you might as well be in Germany. Get a pretzel and have a day with it. So.
Or go over and get a Patriot Sandwich Company sandwich and everything, and bring it home and sit down there with that nice room temperature stout. Oh, and get into that. Well,
I want to drink now. I know it's 8:30, but
that's what I'm saying. I'd like to continue this show, but I'm just getting too damn thirsty for that. I got to go out and get something to drink. But again, we want to remind you, the Patriot Sandwich Company in Denton, Texas. Go over, see them, mention Trash Talk, and you'll get a free drink. And put your name and your email address in an envelope. Send it to Trash Talk, Box 5444, Frisco, Texas, 75035. You got now until Valentine's Day. We're going to pick a winner, and the winner is going to get lunch for two. at Patriot Sandwich Company. You can't get a better deal than that.
It's a great deal. It's a great deal.
So go out and have a good day, and
Yeah.
boy, wipe those suds off the mouth, and we'll catch you right here same time next week.
See you guys.